If I told you that Pontius Pilate regretted his role in the death of Jesus long after the crucifixion, what would you say? Would you believe that Pilate, the very man who condemned Jesus, later wrote a letter to the Roman Emperor Tiberius? A letter in which he spoke of Jesus' miracles, his trial, his crucifixion, and wait for it, his resurrection. What exactly did that letter say? What words did Pontius Pilate choose when discussing Jesus? And more importantly, what could he have possibly told the Roman emperor about the resurrection of the Son of God? But here's something even more astonishing. Did you know that this letter contains incredible details about Jesus' appearance? Descriptions so vivid, so specific, that they aren't even recorded in the Gospels. This is what this episode is all about. We're diving deep into the content of that letter, uncovering its hidden revelations, and exploring what it tells us about Jesus Christ. Now, I want you to judge for yourself. As we read portions of the letter that Pontius Pilate wrote to Caesar, ask yourself, what was Pilate truly trying to convey? Here is how it begins. Pontius Pilate to Tiberius Caesar, the emperor, greetings. In these days, there has appeared among us a man of great virtue named Jesus Christ. And from there, the story unfolds. But before we dive in, if you're as intrigued by these historical and biblical mysteries as I am, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more eye-opening content like this. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive. Now, let's get started. He walks among us even now. Among the Gentiles, he is honored as a prophet of truth. Yet, to his own disciples, he is far more. They call him the Son of God. He raises the dead. He heals the sick. No affliction is beyond his touch. A man of striking presence, somewhat tall, with a noble bearing. His countenance commands both love and reverence, evoking a sense of awe in all who behold him. His hair, the color of ripened chestnut, falls plainly to his ears. From there, it cascades downward in waves, radiant, curling, flowing over his shoulders. At the crown of his head, a distinct parting marks his hair, styled in the manner of the Nazarenes. His forehead is smooth, refined, untouched by flaw or imperfection. His face, unmarred by wrinkles, carries a natural warmth, adorned with a delicate blush of red. His nose and mouth, perfectly proportioned, crafted as if by divine design. His beard, full yet not overly long, mirrors the hue of his hair, thick, slightly forked, adding to the quiet dignity of his appearance. His eyes, gray, clear, piercing, see beyond the surface. They are quick to perceive, quick to reprove. When he speaks, his words carry both kindness and authority. He admonishes with a presence that is both fearsome and compelling, yet his voice remains gentle, his manner refined. In conversation, he is thoughtful, composed, balancing wisdom with a quiet, inviting grace. Never has he been seen to laugh, yet many have witnessed his tears. In form, in spirit, in presence, he is beyond compare. His hands and arms, graceful, strong, and strikingly beautiful, were unlike those of any ordinary man. In speech, he was measured, temperate, and wise, exuding a humility that commanded respect. His beauty was beyond compare, surpassing the sons of men. But envy burns fiercely in the hearts of those who fear losing power. Moved by jealousy, the chief priests sought to take his life. They came to me, bringing with them a man, a betrayer, Judas Iscariot. It was he who led them to Jesus. It was he who delivered him into their hands, and with violence they dragged him before my judgment seat. I examined him, questioning the basis of their accusations. He stood before me, poised, unwavering, answering with quiet dignity, never once showing resistance. Yet, at times, his words carried a brilliance, an eloquence that was almost otherworldly. I asked him plainly, "What religion do you follow?" He replied, "O Caesar, I am a king, but my kingdom is not of this world." I pressed further, "Are you a god?" He looked at me and answered, "You say so, for I am the truth and the life. I am the good shepherd. I am the door." Even as these words were spoken, the crowd grew restless. The mob swelled with rage. The fury of the Jewish leaders knew no bounds. They sought nothing but his destruction. And so I gave my order. I yielded to their cries. I commanded that he be crucified in accordance with their law. And then, darkness. At the very moment he was crucified, the skies turned black. The sun vanished at midday. The stars shone in the gloom, and the moon, like blood, ceased to give its light. The world stood in eerie silence. And then the dead rose. From their graves they emerged, appearing to many throughout the city. I stood in the grip of fear. My soul trembled. In that moment I knew I had condemned a man unlike any other. I rushed to cleanse myself. Taking water in my hands, I washed them of his blood, the blood of a just man, a man without equal. As you read this letter, as you hear this testimony, one thing is unmistakably clear. Pontius Pilate did not merely judge Jesus, he sought to understand him. Why such detail? Why such careful description of his features, his presence, his words? The answer is simple. In those days, there were no images, no portraits, no means of preserving a man's likeness. When writing of someone of great significance, one had to be precise. One had to etch their presence into the minds of the readers so that, should they ever encounter him in another account or another vision, they would know. And so the letter continues. Recent events in my province have been of such a nature that I felt compelled to report them in detail. For I would not be surprised if, in time, these events alter the very destiny of our nation. The gods seem to have turned their backs upon us, and I fear we may be cursed. Cursed be the day I succeeded Valerius Gratus as governor of Judea. Jerusalem, among all the conquered cities, was the most difficult to govern. It seethed with unrest. I lived each day in fear of insurrection, and yet, to suppress this volatile city, I had but a single centurion and a handful of soldiers. I pleaded for reinforcements from the prefect of Syria, but he had none to spare. He barely had enough to defend his own borders. And this is the great flaw of our empire, our thirst for conquest, our relentless expansion beyond what we can sustain. It is this unchecked ambition that may one day be our undoing. And there you have it, the words of Pontius Pilate himself. Pause. Reflect. This letter reveals something astonishing. The defense of Jerusalem rested upon a single centurion within his cohort. Yet, even with such limited forces, Pilate did not fear a rebellion of men. No, what unsettled him was something greater, something beyond human power. A man who claimed to be the truth and the life. A man whose crucifixion turned the skies black and shook the earth. A man who, even in death, was unstoppable. Roman authority in Judea was a fragile thing, held together not by strength, but by sheer necessity. A city on the edge of revolt, ruled by a governor with only a handful of soldiers. Pontius Pilate was not the first to struggle with this burden. His predecessor, Valerius Gratus, had voiced the same frustrations. Jerusalem, he lamented, was an exceptionally difficult city to govern. The people were restless, their tempers volatile. Order was a delicate illusion, one that could shatter at any moment. And so, when Pilate took command, he inherited not just a province, but a crisis. His account reveals the stark reality. Despite the ever-present threat of rebellion, he had but a single centurion and a mere handful of soldiers to maintain order in Jerusalem. The weight of Roman rule in this region rested on the backs of too few. This shortage of military force underscored the vulnerability of Roman control. A single spark could ignite an uprising, and Pilate knew it. He was acutely aware of the consequences of overextending the empire, spreading its forces too thin, ruling more land than it could defend. This awareness shaped his decisions. It factored into every choice he made, including his handling of Jesus' trial and crucifixion. But let's return to Pilate's letter. Among the countless rumors that reached my ears, one stood out above the rest. They spoke of a young man, a preacher, who had emerged from Galilee. He spoke with an unusual authority, delivering his message with an almost divine conviction. They said he preached of a new law, given to him by the gods who had sent him. At first, I feared he was yet another agitator, a threat to Roman stability. I braced myself for another uprising, another zealot rallying the people against the empire. But then, something strange happened. My fears were dispelled. Jesus of Nazareth spoke not as an enemy of Rome, but almost as a friend. His words did not incite rebellion. They did not call for the overthrow of the empire. Instead, they carried a different weight, one that even I could not fully understand. One day, as I was passing through Salem, I saw a crowd gathered near the road. The people stood listening, captivated. In their midst, leaning against a tree, stood a lone figure. He spoke with a calm authority, his voice unwavering. I asked who he was. The answer came quietly, yet with certainty. That is Jesus. This I could have suspected. The difference between him and those around him was unmistakable. His golden-colored hair and beard gave him an almost celestial presence, radiant, otherworldly. He appeared to be about 30 years of age. Never before had I seen a countenance so serene, so utterly peaceful. And yet, what a contrast he was to the people who listened to him. Men with dark beards, their faces tanned and weathered by the harsh sun. He stood apart. Now, let's pause for a moment and consider this. Why is this description so significant? Because, to my knowledge, this is the only recorded depiction of Jesus' physical appearance in any historical document. And one detail stands out: the mention of golden-colored hair and beard. Earlier in the letter, we read another description. His hair was said to be the color of chestnut, perhaps the same thing. Yet the phrasing here introduces an intriguing possibility. Was this description truly part of Pilate's original account, or was it an addition by later scribes who copied the document over the centuries? Could it be that Jesus, unlike many of his contemporaries, had lighter hair and beard? Some scholars argue this detail was an embellishment, a later interpolation meant to align his appearance with certain artistic traditions. Others, however, believe it could be an authentic recollection, a rare glimpse into his true physical form. We may never know for certain, but regardless, it's a fascinating detail to consider. That said, does it truly matter? Now, let's return to Pilate's report. Unwilling to disrupt him with my presence, I continued my walk, but I signaled to my secretary to remain behind and listen. His name was Manlius. He was no ordinary man, the grandson of one of the chief conspirators who had once encamped in Etruria, awaiting Catiline. A man of deep intelligence and unwavering loyalty, Manlius had lived in Judea for many years. He spoke Hebrew fluently and understood the people well. He was devoted to me, a man in whom I placed my utmost confidence. Later, upon returning to the praetorium, I found Manlius waiting. He recounted to me the words of Jesus, the words he had spoken at Solomon's portico. Never, in all my studies of Roman philosophy, nor in the teachings of the greatest thinkers, had I heard anything that could compare to the wisdom of this man. One of the many rebellious Jews, those ever-present agitators in Jerusalem, had sought to trap him with a question. They asked him whether it was lawful to pay tribute to Caesar. His answer was unlike any I had ever heard. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. It was because of the wisdom in this statement that I granted so much liberty to the Nazarenes. Had I wished, I could have had Jesus arrested and exiled to Pontus. It was well within my power, but such an act would have gone against the very justice that Rome had always prided itself upon. The man was neither seditious nor rebellious, and so I extended to him my protection, perhaps unknown even to himself. He was free, free to act, free to speak, free to gather disciples, free to teach the people. No praetorian edict restrained him, but not all looked upon him with favor. The poor did not resent him. It was the rich and powerful who sought to silence him. And indeed, Jesus was harsh toward them. To the scribes and Pharisees, he would say, "You are a brood of vipers. You are like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but full of decay within." To those who boasted of their wealth and charity, he offered nothing but scorn. When a publican flaunted his great alms, Jesus merely pointed to a poor widow and said, "Her small offering is worth far more in the eyes of God." Day after day, new complaints arrived at the praetorium. Accusations of insolence, warnings that Jesus' teachings would provoke the people. Rumors began to spread. I was warned that something would soon happen to him. That Jerusalem had a long history of stoning those who called themselves prophets. That if the Roman prefecture did not act, an appeal would be made directly to Caesar. Yet my governance was approved by the Senate. A reinforcement had been promised to me once the Parthian War was settled, but at that moment, my forces were too weak to suppress an uprising. And so, I resolved to take a course of action that would restore peace to the city, without subjecting the Praetorian to disgrace. Now, I hope you've been listening carefully. Pontius Pilate knew of Jesus long before that fateful day. He allowed him freedom. He permitted him to preach, to gather crowds, to move about unrestrained. Why? Because he saw no rebellion in him. Despite the relentless pressure from the religious leaders of the time, Pilate found no justification to prosecute Jesus, not until the moment came when it was no longer about justice, but about expedience. In the end, Pontius Pilate sacrificed Jesus, not out of conviction, but out of fear. Faced with the possibility of an uprising, knowing full well that he lacked the military strength to maintain control, he made his choice. He gave up Jesus to preserve the fragile peace of Jerusalem. Poignant, isn't it? Especially when we consider the mission of Jesus himself. Pilate hesitated. He did not want to crucify Jesus. Instead, he handed him over, choosing political stability over justice, choosing power over truth. His priority was not righteousness, but survival. He was an opportunist, through and through. Pilate may have washed his hands of the matter, but no amount of water could cleanse him of innocent blood. His name, forever tied to history's greatest injustice, serves as a reminder of a man who valued his authority more than his conscience. Yet, despite all this, we must acknowledge one thing. Pilate left behind a record, a testimony. And from that, we gain something invaluable. We gain documentary, evidentiary proof that Jesus of Nazareth not only lived, but was, without question, crucified. But before we close this episode, let's examine one more crucial piece of evidence about Jesus, something directly linked to Pontius Pilate himself. Let's talk about the Pilate Stone. What does the Pilate Stone reveal about the crucifixion of Jesus? The Pilate Stone, also known as the Pilate inscription, is an ancient artifact discovered near Caesarea Maritima in present-day Israel. It is a dedicatory inscription etched into a limestone block, and it carries immense historical significance. Why? Because it is archaeological proof of the existence of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, the same man mentioned in the New Testament accounts of Jesus' trial and crucifixion. We've been reading Pilate's letter to Caesar, but what tangible evidence do we have that Pilate himself was real? This artifact, the Pilate Stone, proves that Pontius Pilate was not just a name in ancient texts. He was real, flesh and blood, a historical figure who governed Judea at the exact time Jesus walked the earth. The inscription on the Pilate Stone. The inscription, written in Latin, reads, "To the divine Augustus this Tiberian, Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea." Why does this matter? Because Roman leaders often saw themselves as gods, hence the title "To the divine Augusti." This was not merely an administrative marker, it was a declaration of status and power. The significance of Caesarea Maritima. Today, we know that Caesarea Maritima lies along the Mediterranean coast of Israel. During Roman rule, it was a vital administrative and political center. The Pilate Stone was discovered there, repurposed within a staircase leading up to a theater at the site. It was archaeologists who identified the stone, recognizing the Latin inscription carved into its surface. Conclusion: when we put all the pieces together, the letter of Pilate and the stone of Pilate, we see something extraordinary. Not only does history confirm the existence of Pontius Pilate, but it also supports the biblical accounts of Jesus' ministry and crucifixion. And beyond that, these records provide details about Jesus' physical appearance, details not included in the canonical Gospels. This is history. This is evidence. Thank you for watching. If you found this content enlightening, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. God bless you. Amen.